Hey everyone, welcome to 2026. So today I'm going to be drawing a lot of the important dinosaur discoveries from 2025. I'm not drawing all of them, of course, because there were 44 of them and on my A3 piece of paper, there's just not enough space for that. So I'm going to be drawing a select few that were scientifically significant or they were cool. Once it's become the new year, it can be easy to be focused on New Year's resolutions and all the other many possibilities of this new lap around the sun. But at the same time, it can also be good to take a moment to look back at what happened in the year gone by. In this case, obviously, the major scientific discoveries made. Some big, some small, and some rewriting the ecosystem dynamics thought to occur in incredibly famous fossil formations. So, without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to start this off with a relatively small addition to this artwork, but one that is incredibly important to the timeline and classification of Pachycephalosauria, which is Zavacephaly. So Zavacephaly was officially discovered in 2019, which was 6 years ago, but it was only just described in September 2025, making it a more recent addition to the scientific roster. What made Zavacephaly stand out as an important species was two main things. One, this specimen was old, really old for a Pachycephalosaur, with living in the Aptian stage of the early Cretaceous, which is about 121 million years ago, which pushes the timeline back by 30 million years for this group, which is an extremely long time even for the scale of dinosaurs. This also pushed back when we thought the domed heads of Pachycephalosaur dinosaurs began developing, with the complete skull of this animal being a major finding, which leads perfectly into the second point. Zavacephaly is the most complete Pachycephalosaur ever found, with 54% of its skeleton being preserved, which might not sound like much, but when most of the fossils from this group are fragmentary, 54% can go a long way. Despite how significant this animal was to the timeline of Pachycephalosaurs, it wasn't very big. Not that Pachycephalosaurs are very large animals in general. Zavacephaly was only about a meter long and weighing about 6 kilograms, or about 10 times the length of Nick Stobel's tongue, the longest tongue in the world, and weighing about as much as 50 standard bananas. This little guy was most likely a herbivore, but at the same time, it is very likely that Zavacephaly would adopt a more omnivorous lifestyle when needed, as is the case with many herbivorous animals past and present. This animal lived in the Kurenduk Formation of Mongolia, living alongside various ornithomimids and ornithopods like Choirodon. And now it's time for us to move on to our next animal, which is Spicamelus, the Jurassic ankylosaur, with its official description being released in September 2025. Now, about Spicamelus, the first thing is obviously the fact that this is one of the coolest looking dinosaurs I've ever seen. I mean, this is an incredibly metal looking ankylosaur. I mean, spikes. There are so many spikes all over this animal, giving it this incredibly unique look. This animal is also significant because, like Zavacephaly, it pushes back the age of ankylosaurid animals, being the oldest known member of this family of armored dinosaurs, providing a bit of a missing link between ankylosaurids and their earlier relatives, the stegosaurs. This is demonstrated by the tail club which this animal possessed, which also possesses some very Thagomizer-like traits. Thagomizer being named after the late Thag Simmons, and it is the array of spikes which is on the end of stegosaur tails. We don't know the full spikiness because the remains are rather fragmentary, and I will admit my dinosaur is a little bit inaccurate on how much spikes it has because, as you can see in this diagram, they had some larger spikes on the base of the tail above the hip, which I very stupidly forgot to add to my drawing. It is likely that these spikes were a lot bigger than what the bones represent because of things like keratin sheaths, which are present in horned animals today. Spicamelus was also about 3 to 4 meters long and weighed about 1 ton, but size and weight estimates are varying and not very well studied and accurate due to the fragmentary nature of these fossils, so definitely take the estimates of 1/24th the height of Big Ben and 12,500 times the weight of a harmonica with a grain of salt. Spicamelus lived in the El Merz Formation in what is now Morocco in the mid-Jurassic, living alongside the Stegosaur Thyreosaurus, as well as various named and unnamed dinosaurs from that formation being evident from fossils, which would display evidence of theropods, crocodilomorphs, and other cool extinct species coexisting with this animal. Well, that's this lovely Spicamelus done. Now we're moving on to Joaquin Raptor, a megaraptorid from South America, discovered in September 25 as well, with a certain taste for crocodilians. As I said, Joaquin Raptor was a dinosaur from a group called Megaraptorids or Megaraptora, which is a very cool group of animals from the Cretaceous, ranging from South America through Asia and Australia. Joaquin raptor was one of these animals from South America. Like Zabacephali, this dinosaur is one of the most complete animals we have from the family Megaraptora. These fossils also date to the very end of the Cretaceous period, making this the most recent species of Megaraptorid we have to date. Another very cool fact about Joaquin raptor is that the fossil was found with the leg bone of a crocodile in its mouth, meaning that this animal was found midway through eating lunch or fighting the crocodile, but that's quite unlikely, which is simply insane. Not only do we have very few fossilized skulls of adult Megaraptorids, but we have just found one which was actively going through the process of eating something, which is like a million billion chance or something. This Megaraptorid was about 7 meters long with a weight of 1 ton, or about as heavy as 2,222 standard size 5 soccer ball, and about as long as 130 credit cards. An animal which would be large enough to make a quick meal of small crocodiles and squishy biped blobs such as yourself. Joaquin raptor is such an amazing and very cool Megaraptorid, which is a group that we don't know very much about. This animal has somewhat helped us classify Megaraptorids in the theropod family tree, which is still up for debate. I'm pretty sure that at this current moment, Megaraptorids are sitting in the Tyrannosauroid family at the moment, but that may change upon further research. And now we're moving on from Joaquin raptor to Huayracursor, an animal described as recently as October 2025. Huayracursor was a prosauropod, meaning that this is part of the group which are ancestors to the mighty sauropod dinosaurs, or long-necked dinosaurs. This one, if I may be completely honest, doesn't look very special, but looks can be deceiving. This animal shows that longer necks in prosauropods started developing long before what we previously thought, making this little transitional fossil a very interesting one, to say the least. It was discovered in what is now Argentina from the Triassic period, which long predates the later sauropods which they are related to. This animal was rather small for a dinosaur, being about 2 meters long and weighing about 18 kilograms. This is a few centimeters longer than Ian Malcolm's actor, Jeff Goldblum, and about as heavy as a standard microwave, so these things are pretty light. I mean, they are longer than I am tall, and weigh only enough that I could pick them up without much issue. Thus concludes our information on Huayracursor, and now onto a later relative of this animal, which is much larger than its predecessor, which is the new subspecies of Mamenchisaurus, specifically Mamenchisaurus sanjiangensis. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I will note that I ran out of storage on my camera when filming the rest of the dinosaurs in this video, so these are going to take place on a different piece of paper, and then we'll cut back to what they look like in the original artwork. This guy was officially described in November 2025, providing us with a brand new Mamenchisaurus species. Mamenchisaurus sanjiangensis was about 24 meters in length, or longer than your average blue whale, and weighed about 50 tons, which is heavy, but significantly less than the previously mentioned blue whale. This animal was likely 14 meters tall, which is about 1/4 of the height of the Mahabodhi temple in India. This animal, being a sauropod, was a plant eater, and was native to what is now China, being found near Chongqing. Mamenchisaurus are sauropods with extremely long necks, even for sauropods, making up over half of their body length. All of these animals are native to China, mainly the Sichuan basin of the country. The different Mamenchisaurus species vary in size, but not greatly in shape, all of them possessing the relatively similar body plan of a very long neck compared to their body. Mamenchisaurus sanjiangensis is by no means the largest, longest, or tallest of the Mamenchisaurus species, but is still a very interesting, very cool sauropod. Now we've moved on to an animal which has been discovered long before now, but as of October 2025, has received quite a major update in its overall morphology. This animal is, of course, Edmontosaurus annectens, a large hadrosaur from the late Cretaceous. I'm not going to give you a whole rundown on this animal, mainly because I've already done a charity video where I drew it and gave a few facts on it, and also Edmontosaurus is a famous enough animal for you to probably know about it. So all this new information we have has come from a pair of Edmontosaurus mummies, which is in quotation marks. They aren't technically mummies, because if a dinosaur did manage to mummify, it would be long degraded over the millions of years since their existence. For a dinosaur mummy to form, well, specifically this kind, a few steps have to take place in order to preserve them this well. Firstly, the mummies have to die, obviously. It is thought that these Edmontosaurus died due to drought-related reasons. After their death, the sun has to dry them out, while they are partially scavenged by by smaller creatures, which releases all the gas and juices which would prevent them from fossilizing in this way. This dried, deflated husk then has to be quickly buried, likely in a flash flood, which prevents the dinosaur from decomposing fully. Then all the bacteria inside the animal and in the mud surrounding it has to form a biofilm around the decaying animal, which attracts extremely fine particles of clay. These fine particles then coat areas of soft tissue like skin and scales and become hard rock along with the bones underneath, which are fossilizing. So the fossils aren't actually of the animal's skin, but they're like a template around it, which means we now know a lot more about what the scale patterns of Edmontosaurus look like. None of the soft tissues or muscles are preserved, so it's just mainly the skin as they decay after the template is made, but it still gives us invaluable evidence as to certain features this animal had when it was alive. Edmontosaurus is one of the only animals that we have these mummies for, which is kind of weird that it's happened more than once. It's happened with both Edmontosaurus regalis, the other species, and Edmontosaurus annectens. The reason they fossilize more than other dinosaurs is likely due to the lifestyle that they lived. Anyways, these mummies allowed us to learn so many things about Edmontosaurus annectens which we wouldn't know just from their fossilized bones, with that small layer of clay allowing scientists to determine that 1. Both Edmontosaurus species had a fleshy crest on top of its head. We only had evidence for Edmontosaurus regalis before 2025, but now we know that annectens also had one. 2. Along with the fleshy crest on the head, we now know that they had an elevated ridge, which covered most of the back of Edmontosaurus annectens, ending at the tail, where it is replaced by a more bony ridge, which was the standard of previous depictions. Hooves. We already knew that the front feet of Edmontosaurus had hooves, but now we also know that that extends to the back feet of the animal, with these large keratin hooves replacing the previously accepted toe claws. Along with these major findings, these new mummies also allow us a lot of insight into the skin, scale, and size estimates of these animals. One final discovery was made to round off 2025, and that being the discovery of a small alvarosaurid, Manipulonyx. This animal was described in December, and very late December at that. I remember hearing about it a few days before the new year commenced. So Manipulonyx, being an alvarosaurid, had very short, robust claws, each tipped with one large claw. Although in the case of Manipulonyx, it had the major claw being large and curved, and two smaller claws, as well as various little conical spikes used for gripping. It is theorized that Manipulonyx used these weird grippy things to hold onto round objects. More specifically, eggs, meaning it's likely that eggs made up a large portion of this animal's diet. In my eyes, if this information is true, then maybe Manipulonyx could be the true oviraptor or egg thief. I'm very sorry, but I couldn't find the size estimates of Manipulonyx anywhere for the life of me. If you guys managed to find it, drop it in the comments, but I'm assuming that this animal wasn't very large, as most alvarosaurid dinosaurs are on the smaller scale of the dinosaur size chart. This interesting little animal lived in the Nemegt Formation of Mongolia, living alongside some very famous animals like Velociraptor, Tarbosaurus, Therizinosaurus, Dinocaurus, and a newly discovered animal as of 2025, Schirrapax, a dromaeosaur which was more robust and significantly stouter than its smaller cousin Velociraptor, which I unfortunately wasn't able to draw this new dinosaur as for lack of space. This may be a discovery of a small animal, but it was in no way a small discovery, and other than that, I think that rounds off every major discovery of last year. I think we definitely covered all of the important ones, and it would be absolutely crazy if I were to have left out, say, the discovery of a small Tyrannosaurid. Oh wait, there was Conculu. Yeah, sorry about that, I didn't have enough space on my piece of paper. Thanks so much for watching, sorry that this video was late, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye! Did I get you? Of course I'm going to draw Nanotyrannus. It was probably one of the largest paleontological discoveries of the last year. I will admit, I honestly thought that it was a young T-Rex, along with most of the paleontological community. And I'm sorry, I was wrong. But what a wonderful way to be wrong. I mean, we discovered that a previously dubious small tyrannosaur actually lived alongside T-Rex, hunting prey that the mighty Tyrannosaurus itself wouldn't bother with. If that's not an amazing discovery, I don't know what is. So, I would explain every single reason why Nanotyrannus was up for debate, but for the sake of your internet-cooked attention spans, I will summarize. So, Nanotyrannus was first discovered back in 1942 and was initially described as a new species of Gorgosaurus. until in 1988 when one Philip T. Barker decided that Nanotyrannus should be its own species due to the fused nature of the skull indicating that it was a fully grown animal instead of a juvenile of that species. This gave us Nanotyrannus, meaning the pygmy tyrant. Allow me to clarify, Nanotyrannus was in no means small compared to things like us, being quite a large animal and would have easily have made a meal out of people like you and me. What gave it the name Nanotyrannus was the fact that compared to T-Rex, who this animal shared its environment and at the time was thought to be its closest relative, Nanotyrannus was a puny animal. But the glorious Nanotyrannus would not live long, as in 2001, Thomas Carr and Jack Horner, not the guy from the nursery rhyme A Paleontologist, deduced that from the fact that we have numerous well-documented specimens of juvenile tyrannosaurids of various other species like Gorgosaurus, Nanotyrannus fit the bill of a juvenile T-Rex well enough. There are some minor morphological differences, like a change in tooth count, with Nanotyrannus having more teeth than T-Rex, and longer arms, not compared to body size, but just longer arms in general than T-Rex. But they were mostly written off, with the problem of tooth count being solved mainly through a misunderstanding of a study in crocodile growth. From 2001, it was widely accepted that Nanotyrannus was not a valid species and was deemed a juvenile T-Rex. And that changed in October of this year, when a study for Nature, conducted by Lindsay Zano and James Napoli, investigated the very cool dueling dinosaurs fossil of a young Triceratops and what was thought to be a juvenile T-Rex locked in either a threat display or a passing moment with each other. The study indicated that the juvenile T-Rex in this situation was actually a mature animal through analysis of bone rings in the skull of this creature, putting the age of this animal at about 20 years old, which is way too old to be a young T-Rex, considering that T-Rexes likely live to about 30-40 years. So it was impossible for this to be a young animal, meaning that Nanotyrannus was a valid species. This was definitely the biggest nail in the coffin for the believers that Nanotyrannus was a young Rex, with later reviews of other Nanotyrannus specimens and re-evaluation of the morphological differences between these two animals, indicating that we now have two species of Nanotyrannus, being Nanotyrannus lansiensis and Nanotyrannus lithaeus. And thus ends the saga of the debates between people who believe Nanotyrannus was real and people who thought it was fake. I won't keep you for much longer. I'm just going to cover the fact that a fully grown Nanotyrannus lithaeus could have reached a weight of 1.2 tons, or the weight of 6 million toothpicks, and it was about 5 to 6 meters in length, or about 3.5 times as long as Albert Einstein was tall. That about concludes this little video, and a very big thank you to you guys for watching. Can we just have a quick moment of silence for 2025's amazing paleontological discoveries, which I failed to mention in this video. Just know that in their absence, they are not forgotten and are in no way less important or cool than all of the animals that I drew in this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and fact check me in the comments. Sorry again that this video was pretty late. Research took a lot longer than I thought it would, as well as script writing, and I'm also a big procrastinator, so that also gets in the way. And apart from that, we're ready to run headfirst into a full new year of 2026. I can't wait to go on the ride with all of you. Bye-bye.